Welcome to Veterans Update. I'm Senior Policy Advisor Jason Allen. In cooperation with the American Legion, today we have Keith King. And Keith is a decorated veteran from the Vietnam era and is going to be talking about small business, entrepreneurship, and jobs in the state of Michigan. Keith, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
We always start out with our veterans that we interview. And
Right.
I know you spent some time in Southeast Asia.
I did.
Talking a little bit about your involvement in the military. And so if you could kind of share with us some of the things you did in protecting our nation, we're truly grateful.
Well, pretty simple. United States Army, 1969 1971. My experiences were pretty direct in the sense that I went to basic, I went to advanced training, and I went straight to Vietnam.
Wow.
I joke about the fact that the law says you had to be 180 days in the military to be a veteran. And if something had happened to me on my way to Vietnam, I wouldn't have been a veteran. I was only in 150 days.
Oh,
so,
my word.
you know,
That was a quick turnaround, man.
train them and get them and
Yeah.
ship them. So I was actually a school-trained military police, and I got to Vietnam, and I was there a few weeks, and they were forming a special, what we call combat support unit, which basically in today's language everybody would know as a convoy. But we, because we were military police, worked with the intelligence and had to lead the scout and the trail. So we ran convoys all up and down the Central Highlands.
Wow.
I basically ended up as a M60 machine gunner, and I gunned for about 8.5 months. So I spent the last couple of months relaxing and having fun the best I could. But I did my time and came home, and thankfully I made it home. So I'm thankful every day.
And then you spent some time kind of getting the Vietnam Veterans Organization started, and the memorial and the monument here in Lansing, which is a great testimony.
Well, thank you. Yeah, in 1980, we had some guys running around trying to form a group called the Vietnam Veterans of America. And
Our
so
friend Jack Devine.
Jack
and
Devine
you
and myself. There's not a lot of George Claxton. You
Okay,
may
yeah,
remember
yeah,
George.
yeah.
All right. So we made a commitment to each other to say we need to band together to help each other. And that's what we did. And as we were working with the Vietnam Veterans of Michigan, we joke about the guys out of New York who came in to talk to us, and we just thought they were, a bit pompous about they would dare to claim Vietnam Veterans of America. And we would say, look, you're Vietnam Veterans in New York.
Yeah.
And then they said, well, if we join together, we can be America. And I said, well, okay, we can work this out.
Right.
And so, we formed one of the first chapters in America, Chapter 9 in Detroit. We formed one of the first state councils. I had the pleasure of being what we would call state commander. And as we built the organization, and Michigan, by the way, was one of the first states to what we call memorialize Congress to actually give us our federal charter. So we've been very, very active in that organization, and we continue to be, leaders of that. And as you mentioned, the Vietnam Monument.
That was built because that was prior to my tenure in the legislature,
Yes.
and that was a commission that was formed. And
Yes.
you were on the board, if I remember correctly.
I was one of the 9 state commissioners. Wow. So it was one of those things where my version of that story is a friend of mine came to my house, sat at my dining room table, and said, Keith, I need you for 2 years.
Yeah, famously. I've been in those meetings.
You know that
one?
one?
Absolutely.
Okay, you know that one. All right.
Different guy.
11 years later,
Right, yeah.
we finally dedicate the memorial. But the monument, I think if anyone who has not come to Lansing to see it, if you come and see it, you'll see why we spent those years.
It's on the west side of the Capitol.
It is. And we say it's between the Capitol and the Supreme Court building, Michigan Supreme Court building, so it's on a path of honor. To us, it's a beautiful monument. It's won 40-some awards for design. But the part of that story that I tell is all the anguish, all the time, all of things that were involved in raising the money to build that, all those 11 years, all of that went away at the day of the dedication. And I had a Gold Star mother. If you know, Gold Star mothers are mothers who had lost a son in the war. A Gold Star mother come up to me and hugged me, kissed me, and said, "Thank you for honoring my son." Wow. And all of a sudden, all
the anguish, the challenges,
all that went away. Yeah. All of a sudden, that was worth 11 years, of my life. But yeah, it's a privilege to be associated with the monument, and like everything else, we had a great crew of people around us that helped us. Yourself and a lot of the legislators who went to bat for us to get that monument built.
Okay, so you transitioned to that, and then you kind of have kicked around in a lot of different places. I know we worked together on before the unique challenges in the city of Detroit on the Veterans Committee, and then I kept hearing all these rumblings about you and business, and then we worked together on the first cut on set-asides for purchasing. So tell us, because this becomes very complicated, and if I'm correct, in the dysfunctionality of the federal government, and I say that fondly, you've got all the benefits over at the VA, and then Commerce has got set-asides, and then they're purchasing over at the U.S. Department of Management and Budget, and then there's the folks over at, Labor that's got the job.
In DOT, in GSA. And let's talk about the SBA while we're thrown in.
But you've got an organization that sort of helps that.
Yeah, what happened is I am thankful that my company that I've been running now for 16 years was one of the first companies certified by the VA as a veteran-owned and disabled veteran-owned business in America back in 2008.
Okay, so veteran-owned. How do you define? And can we start with that? Because so many of our listeners probably think, well, I'm a veteran, so I can be a veteran-owned business, but then there's other things.
Yeah, the first criteria, obviously, is 51% minimum ownership of the company. Okay. The other thing is absolutely control. In other words, you can't just be a front.
Okay, got it.
Okay, so you got to actually run, operate, and control your company. Okay. The distinction between what is called service disabled. In my particular case, as we talked about with my military background, I was injured, and in that injury, the one that most people would relate to, most war movies have some big explosion, some guy on the side of the street or side of the road bleeding out of his ears. Okay, that was me.
Okay, so that was what you're talking about, 2 months kind of hanging out and
yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and what happens with that is that is directly connected to my military service. Okay. So when they say, well, he's service connected, that means my injuries or my disability is connected to my military service. And when you're bleeding out of your ears, that's pretty easy to prove. Okay, so that was not disputed. So not only am I a veteran-owned, but I'm a disabled veteran-owned, and like I said, I was one of the first certified in America back in 2008. So what happened is as we looked at that for how that applied to the federal government, that certification really became very narrow in its application. Primarily, it's valid with the VA. The rest of the federal government and all the acronyms we talked about do not require that certification for you to win a bid or a contract. That term is called self-certification. Okay. You basically say you're a veteran or disabled-owned veteran, and no one's checking it. Unfortunately, there are a lot of, let's say, scrupulous people who lie. And there was a lot of fraud. And so what happened is the government said, well, you know what, we need to tighten down that verification procedure. And it became a very onerous process. And what happened is
can I ask, was it different at Interior versus different at Commerce versus DOT versus?
Well, what happened is that none of the other departments require you to have that VA certification. None. So when I was saying it, the scope of it came pretty narrow.
Oh, okay.
What I mean is if you want to do business with the VA, Department of Veterans Affairs, and you want to participate in what they call Veterans First program, they want you to be certified through their process.
I understand.
It's called the CVE.
Okay.
Okay. But it doesn't apply. That certification doesn't apply to virtually any other department of government. So if I wanted to go to Commerce,
Sure.
all they're saying is self-declare it, self-certification. Well, as we've been bumping along, if you will, trying to reach a 3% spend goal in the federal government, what happened is I had an opportunity to sit down with a major commercial, or if you will, corporate America. And I said to them, why are you not hiring veteran-owned businesses? And their answer was pretty blunt, is because you're not certified. And I went, well, wait, time out. I'm certified.
Right.
And they said, no, you don't understand. We don't accept that.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, we don't want the government involved in certification. I said, well, where does that lead to me? And what they said was, you have to create a certification program that is acceptable to us. Okay, what does that mean?
Right. Because what is good at General Motors may be different than what's good at Dow, which is different than what is good at Ford.
Right. But what happened is, thankfully, many of the major corporations in Southeast Michigan, in Michigan in general, in Western Michigan as well, we have some great support in Western Michigan, told me about a group. It's called the $1 Billion Roundtable. This sounds nice. Doesn't that sound nice?
It does.
$1 billion. I want to be a part of the billion.
Right.
What that table is, or was, it's now got 20 members. At the time, it had 19. These are the 20 leading corporations in America that spend $1 billion or more per year with women and minority-owned companies. And they invited us as veterans to come and talk to them. The good news is as they said, go get your certification program together, come back, and we will support you. Because what we do not want is what happened in the early days of the women, what happened in the early days of the minorities, the frauds, the fronts, the fakes, and they all got burned. And they said, we're not going to do that. You've got to put this together. And thankfully, the WeBank, the Women Business Owners, and the National Minority Supplier Development Council, Detroit's chapter is one of the biggest and one of the best, agreed to become our mentors.
Wonderful.
And not only did they teach us their certification, they allowed us to sit in their certification board meetings to review. We literally went out in the streets to do on-site visits with them. We learned a lot. And what I say for the last 2 years, we've been learning the craft of certification. That all accumulated about 8 months ago in April of 2014 in what we call our beta test. Now, what happened in our beta test is we originally had 7 veteran-owned businesses.
Okay, so for our listeners, what you did is you went out and studied the same set-asides for
Yes.
minorities, the same set-asides for women-owned businesses,
Yes.
and tried to replicate that for veteran-owned businesses.
Yes. And, of course, for veteran-owned businesses, there are certain tricks of the trade, if you will, that we knew how to make sure and ensure that not only is that a veteran, but what we call character of service.
Okay.
Because it was very important to the corporations that we certify honorably discharged veterans. And there's all these different classifications of types of discharge, honorable, under conditions, and blah, blah, blah. But we know how to do that.
Right.
And the thing about being a veteran, give me 3 minutes in a room and I'll tell you if he's a veteran or not. Okay? So there's a certain amount of involvement here. And so we not only learned all the, if you will, the paperwork, the corporate, the taxes, all that, legal part of it, but we also know the veteran part of it. And we presented that in what we call our beta test. And the people at that test included the SBA, the VA, the Ford, Chrysler, General Motors, Kellogg's, the women, the minority groups, Vet Biz Central, Matt and the guys out of Flint, and 4 or 5 other corporations. By the time we were done, everybody in the room said, yeah, you got it. You know what you're doing. There's no question that we know about the certification. And in fact, they said, you guys might have been a little too far over the top. You might want to back some of this off. And we've done that. But the fact that we wanted to be able to sit down with General Motors, sit down with Kellogg's, sit down with Ford, or any of the other, Walmart, all of the major, AT&T, all these companies that we're talking to, ConAgra, and say to them, look, if we certify this as a veteran-owned business, you can be absolutely assured that this is a veteran-owned business. And like I said, everybody in the room at that day, at that test, said, yeah, we get it, we accept that. And so what we've had to do now is go out, and we just got back from the National Veteran Business.
And that is sort of evolving too, isn't it?
Yes. And what happened is...
Started probably very small 20 years ago?
Well, 20 years ago, we didn't exist.
Okay.
The law that created us was passed in 1999.
Okay.
And what that law basically did is established us as a classification.
Okay.
Veteran-owned and disabled veteran.
Okay.
And it really wasn't until 2008, so there was that gap in time where the certification came into play. Before that, we were all self-certified.
Right.
But now that that's happened, now that we've kind of hit these various milestones, once we had the opportunity to talk to the corporations, and they were, like I said, very clear, very adamant, very blunt about what they were saying, we started down that path. So going to the National Veteran Business Meeting this past week, we had an opportunity to not only talk to veteran-owned businesses, but to corporations as well. And we also had an opportunity to speak with other governments, like state governments and local government. And what we're finding is not only the willingness to help veterans, not only the desire to help veteran-owned businesses, but as soon as we start saying we have a certification program that addresses fraud, addresses the fakes, and we feel so strong about it that we can basically tell you that for the most part we feel that we can eliminate it, the fraud portion. If they're certified by us, we can prove that. And that response has been tremendous, because what happens is and we talk about this, the thing that we don't want is someone like yourself and some of the people who care about veterans and want to help us to issue a $20 million contract to only find out that the person that you issued it to was not even a veteran. That hurts me. I mean, I am a veteran, and anybody wants to check me out, you can check me out. I'm the real deal. Right. But it also hurts your reputation. It hurts all of us. And so what we want to be able to do, and we talk about this among ourselves, us being the veteran business owners, that if we know a guy is a fake, instead of this whole thing about you can't be a rat, oh no, we're going to call him out immediately, because we know he is hurting all of us. And I think when we look at what we're doing, the part to me that is the most important, I joke about I'm one of the old vets, okay? But my son is a Persian Gulf vet. My nephew just got home from his second tour of Afghanistan, and I hate to say this, but my grandson is in the Army today. Okay?
So a tradition of service within the family.
Well, yeah, but I'm way too young to have a grandson.
I understand. Okay. I got it.
But here's my point. The certification program that we're talking about with the National Veteran Business Development Council, is going to provide them an opportunity to run their own business and do business with corporate America that we don't have today.
So let's go through the process.
Sure.
Okay, so we've defined this, if I'm correct, and you've got a federal process that,
Yes.
that varies by state, locality, and then also within our national government.
Kinda, yes.
Okay. And then we've got hopefully sort of a unified platform, at least within the billion-dollar group that has some sort of. So how does one start? Okay, you know, I don't own a small manufacturing plant in
Right.
Traverse City. I've got a wood company over in Rogers City. I've got a tooling
Right.
company in Detroit. How
Right.
do you? And the other question to add on to this is that, like, it's my understanding, like Ford's does 1% for veteran-owned business.
Ford was the first large corporation to announce their spend, and it was at 3%.
Wow.
And Tony Brown at the time was the senior vice president worldwide purchasing.
Wow.
And Tony made that
That's
commitment.
huge.
Tony was buying, I believe, I want to say he was buying somewhere around 82 to 83 billion a year total for Ford. So take 3%, and you get the big numbers in a hurry.
2.4 very quickly.
Okay, so yes, it was huge, and not only do we acknowledge Tony and the Ford Motor Company for what they've done, but frankly, Kellogg's and General Motors and the other people who have been our supporters have done very much the same, and we acknowledge them as well. But when I look at, to answer your question, what we're saying to people is if you want to do business with the VA, first and foremost, then go ahead and go through that process, what's called the CVE, and go ahead and get your certification.
And that's online. You can find that. At
Yeah, you can go to va.gov and find it.
Certification.
Go through that. But if you want to do business with corporations, then come to us, because at this point we are the only what's called NGO, which I never knew existed. Non-governmental organization. I never knew what that was. An NGO, third party, independent third party. We are a 501c3 nonprofit foundation. So, I mean, again, when we put the council together originally, we filed as an LLC. And the companies came back, corporations came back and said, So we had to go back and redo all our, that's why it's taken 2 years.
Okay, so do you have is it a training school you do, or how does this?
What we have is online. If you go to, again, I know we're using all the acronyms, but again, National Veteran Business Development Council works out to be the NVBDC.org.
Very good.
Go to that site.
And we'll have that listed at the back of the program.
There is, on that site, there is basically a request for information.
Okay.
And you just fill out that information, and then we will send you the documentation you need to move forward if you want to move forward with your certification.
Okay. So with about 3 minutes to go, the certification process is, what, a couple of weeks, a year? How does that, is there a school? Is it?
The only school is our internal people to make sure that our people know what we're doing, why we're doing it, and our whole certification board. Okay. And again, Kellogg serves on that board with us in certifications.
All right, so to get your certification, you go online, request.
You fill out this information, and what we tell people is that within 60 days of a completed application, and I underline completed application, okay?
Is it 5
Some
pages?
of us aren't real good with paperwork.
I understand that. I've been there. Is that 5 pages, 6 pages?
8.
Okay.
Okay, depending on what version we're talking about. But once we get it in-house, once we see it, then we start the process of certification. We have 11 done, so we're already certifying. We're very proud of the fact that we certified the first large company in America, $400 million a year company. That's one of the problems with the VA and the SBA. They only certify small.
Right.
So we have medium size and large in the pipeline.
Is there a fee for this?
Yeah. But again, and for the veterans, the under $1 million is only 300.
Okay, so it's not. Okay.
Actually, my CPA says I'm losing money at 300. So does my wife say. But the point is this: we're not trying to make money off the veterans. we would not exist without corporate support.
Right.
And the corporations are supporting us because our deliverable to the corporations is not only a certified veteran business that they can trust, but we're creating a very robust database. And we believe that that database will become the most valuable tool, and that's why the corporations are supporting us.
Great. So your board is very active. This
Yes.
is going to be the first start at this. And
Yes.
we can find more information out again
At NVBDC.org.
Very good. Keith, I want to thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you, Jason.
Thank
I
you for your
appreciate it.
service, and we look forward to hearing more about
And
this.
thank you for your help with all the veteran causes over all the years.
We're making great progress.
It's better than where we've been.
Absolutely. This concludes another edition of our wonderful program. For more information about this topic or other things, you can look at the websites listed below. Thank you.